Hello, and welcome to Conversations with Dr. Stephen Greer. And this is Dr. Greer, and I'm very glad to be here on the World Puja Network, which hosts us every 2 weeks to bring you an update and information from the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence and Disclosure Project.org. We are going to be talking today with Dr. Jan Bravo, who is a fellow emergency physician and also on the board of directors of CSETI and Disclosure Project, and we're going to be focusing on the case for universal peace, and it's sort of an apropos topic for the season. We're in a season where we hope for peace on Earth, and now we're going to take you to a vision of peace that is not just on Earth, but is interplanetary and universal. And so that's really the focus of our conversation today, and of also sort of the vision of the path forward for the human race. As all of you know, one of the projects of CSETI is to make open and peaceful contact with civilizations that are intelligent species who have reached Earth or observing Earth, and to do so in the foundation of universal awareness that this is the really central thesis of not only the protocols that we use for making contact, but the underlying underpinning philosophical perspective that all creatures in the universe, including humans, are awake, and that a mind is a singularity, that the oneness of awareness and mind is a true experience and state that is the foundation for all the work that CSETI is doing and all the work that humanity has to engage in to become an interstellar civilization. So that's sort of an overview of what we'll be discussing. I'd like to welcome Dr. Bravo to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Yes, so I just wanted to ask you kind of what your perspective is on this subject, Jan, from the point of view of having been out under the stars for dozens and dozens of weeks doing contact, and sort of what your experience of it is.
Well, that's a good question. My experience, first of all, has been amazing. It's written up, had many people write up the experiences, and there's much information on our website. But I will say today, it's an interesting exercise in humanity, in relations, not just humanity, but getting to know other beings and other people, and realizing not only is that possible, but it's happening. But part of it is that I've come to realize that we need to make an effort, and our effort needs to be for the right reasons.
Right.
And when we do put out good intentions and really try to have relations, this is probably how relations should be among countries and really among all peoples. If we put out the intention and really go with an open heart and really wanting peaceful interaction, it happens, and it happens every time. So that would be my first statement. It's there and it's possible for all of us to do, and we've had a lot of experience with it.
Right, right. And, some years ago I wrote a paper that's in the first book that I wrote called Extraterrestrial Contact, the Evidence and Implications, and in that I talk about the evolutionary selection of non-hostility in interstellar civilizations. And really what I mean by that is that any civilization that can go from a distant star system to our solar system has crossed way beyond the nuclear threshold or the atomic energy level of technology into what we've discussed often on the show, the trans-dimensional high voltage scalar type of technologies that allow for objects, which of course this is very apropos in the World Puja Network, but it's very Vedic, is to where they literally dematerialize at one point in space and time and can reappear at another through resonant fields that are very, very high frequency, high voltage systems, which means that a spacecraft and its occupants may be out in the Andromeda Galaxy 2.5 million years from here will literally drop out of linear space-time other previous levels of technological exploration and scientific discovery, the sort of Einsteinian E equals mc square view of the universe, and therefore have discovered the secrets of the atom, and therefore the potential for weapons of mass destruction, and they have not destroyed themselves yet, that this is very good news. In other words, there's an implicit evolutionary selection, because once you reach a certain level of technological capability, if there isn't a concomitant development socially and spiritually, you're simply going to blow yourself up. And this is of course what we've been facing with mutual assured destruction, where all of us, or many of us, grew up during the era of the Cold War, when you had the Soviet Union and the United States with tens of thousands of thermonuclear weapons aimed at each other, and a misunderstanding like the Cuban Missile Crisis could escalate to an event that would be an extinction level event for our civilization and our species. And thank God that hasn't happened. But the point I'm making here is that if you have technologies that are 100 to 1,000 times more sophisticated and potentially, if weaponized, more destructive than a hydrogen bomb, and you haven't blown yourself and other planets up yet, this is a very good indicator that you've reached the point of evolution in your social and spiritual state where you can manage such technologies and avoid the sort of naked aggression and organized murder, which is what we call warfare, to survive to the next level. And I think this is a really important thing for people to think about, because there's so much xenophobia out there about the extraterrestrial presence, and the alleged alien agenda, and on and on and on. And of course, just in the last couple of years, there have been something like 18 movies at some $1 billion+ in expense from Hollywood that have been portraying some sort of alien invasion scenario. And yet, when you think about it, it makes no sense at all. I mean, of course, it kind of fits with our own anthropocentric projection of the human condition onto these species. But in reality, if they have the capability to travel here and are here, a priori, they have the technology to get here. And therefore, if they were hostile, there would be no shooting of lasers and Star Wars-looking things. It would be point, set, match, over, boom, done. And I think that one of the problems is that we do tend to, there's a wonderful Vedic saying that I'm sure everyone at the World Puja Network knows, and it's that the world is as you are, and that in reality, that how we view the extraterrestrial presence is usually a sort of a cosmic Rorschach test, a cosmic mirror that's held up and says much more about us than about these visitors who, from everything we can analyze, are completely non-hostile or socially and spiritually very developed. And that if they were, in fact, hostile, that long before they would have found our little corner of the universe, they probably would have blown themselves up, if not other planets along the way and themselves. Because when you reach this point of technological capability, mutual assured destruction, it would be beyond that. It would be just a global mutually assured disintegration, because the kinds of energy systems that could be weaponized from the kinds of interstellar level of technology are so advanced that an entire planet could be basically atomized and dissolved if you were to weaponize that capability. And given the fact that we've behaved, quite frankly, very bad as galactic neighbors in the last 50 years, targeting these extraterrestrial vehicles, and on many occasions successfully hitting them with electronic weapons and downing them, which is what happened at Roswell, the fact that there hasn't been an aggressive knockback is enormous testimony to their degree of almost Gandhi-like restraint and spiritual and social evolution, as I understand it.
Yes. May I speak to a point? What you said is very important, and it reminded me that I think something is important to say at this point to some people who may be new to the World Puja Network, who might not have heard this message that we've said before. When we talk about interaction with other civilizations and peaceful interactions, a lot of people always say, well, I've never seen a spaceship, and that's what they expect. Well, it speaks to their level of development that they interact with us in many ways.
Right.
Through consciousness-assisted technology, about which you've spoken in the past, through sounds, through telepathic messages that people understand. And these are all, it's really fascinating because these are all peaceful means, whereas if we just talked about the solid devices that people wish to see, there's a difficulty there. As he said, they can be shot down. But it speaks to the vast array of ways that they are working with us if we open and allow to it, and that everyone can have contact.
Yes, and also the lucid dream state. You know, in many cultures, such as the Aboriginals of Australia and certainly the Cherokee, I'm part Cherokee Indian, there was a long tradition of lucid dream work and being awake within the dream and having experiences that were very real, where you could experience things in real time, but also see and experience the future. And this is the nature of consciousness, that it is omnipresent and infinite and not restricted to time or space. But because it's omnipresent, it allows you to awaken to any point in time and space, which also, this salient fact is understood by these interstellar civilizations who, by definition, have mastered trans-dimensional or interdimensional communication, thought, and travel, to the point that it's very effortless for them to interface with us within the lucid dream state of the astral body as easily as you and I can speak on these telephones that we're on. And that this is a level of understanding that is really important, that throughout history, people have had these sort of experiences with civilizations and peoples from other worlds. And I think at one time, most of it was written off as either mythological, imaginary, or something from only the spirit world, when in reality, many of these experiences that are recounted by the Dogon tribe in Africa and throughout India and the Vedas themselves, talking about the Vimanas, many experiences, while there could have been a component where there was a materialized craft or person there, could also happen in this state of consciousness, either during the lucid dream state or in the very deep meditative state, where you're then freed from the limits of space and time, and you're in this expanded state of universal mind or cosmic mind, and can begin to see, and it's been called remote viewing by pop culture recently, but it's really this ability of the seer and the individual to experience in consciousness these other realities and levels of varying dimensions, including the thought world, the astral, the pure consciousness state, where you can appear and see remote places. And this is exactly how extraterrestrial civilizations are communicating, although they may have augmentation using very high-tech electronic devices that can interface with thought. Nevertheless, they understand these trans-dimensional aspects that all intelligent beings have. And the beauty of being a conscious being that's aware of awareness and capable of being aware of awareness is that we can become aware of just the pure state of mind. And that is ultimately, as I see it, the foundation of universal peace and of relations amongst peoples from other worlds, is that there is this commonality that is transcendent, and that is the awake mind itself. And from that nexus of pure consciousness develops the capabilities to then understand that we have much more in common with these civilizations and these people than we can imagine. The ability to be awake, to think, to travel in consciousness, to understand other dimensions, to have lucid dreaming capabilities, to see that the spark of pure consciousness is the within all of us. So that then if they're, whether they're 18 inches high or 18 feet high, or whether they're this color or that color or this thing or that thing, all that becomes sort of ephemeral and superficial and not essential. And the essential experience of consciousness then becomes the foundation for not only contact, but also for understanding what our relationship can be with these other civilizations, even if they have very different IQs and very different emotional natures and very different cultures, which of course they will. I mean, look at the difference between, say, Japanese culture and Italians, and or emotional tendencies or the way people express themselves. And these are just amongst humans on Earth. There's such huge variety. And never mind from person to person, even within a culture. So if you look at the whole cosmos, it's going to be an enormous diversity and variety, but the anchor in all this, the constant, as it were, the center of this vast sort of creation of multiplicity and diversity is this centered place of pure consciousness, which brings us very back to the Vedic concept that all this is that the state of that samadhi state, pure cosmic awareness of the silent meditative state of being, of pure essence of mind. This is really the foundation for interplanetary relations and universal peace. And as we experience that, then we don't see these varying civilizations or peoples or forms or shapes as alien, which is why I try to avoid that word because it's basically a xenophobic word, but we see them more as us. That, you know, and the sort of the motto of the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence is one universe, one people. And in reality, there is this essential oneness that transcends the multiplicity, and that's where we can be one people in the cosmos. So that concept, and not only concept, but then experience of it together out under the stars, sitting in a circle, even as ancient peoples did, is really what we're doing on these expeditions. And when the group reaches that level of coherence and deep oneness and meditative state, that's when these extraterrestrial civilizations appear. It's almost as if that's the cue that this is a group ready to make contact, and they're looking for that level of coherence and depth of awareness and oneness before they do appear.
Right. This reminds me, this is certainly possible for us to do on Earth, although we haven't quite achieved it yet, this level of peace even among our own tribes here on Earth. But we've seen hints of it, say after geophysical calamities, and we know it's possible. And to imagine that on a cosmic level is amazing and astounding, but we do it all the time when we're out in the field.
We do, and the big challenge is understanding that humans and peoples, maybe from this planet and others, will always have differences, but it doesn't mean it has to go to the level of mass organized murder, which is warfare. And I think that this is the big step we have not yet gotten under control. Unfortunately, humanity is at this stage where our science and technology, particularly the classified sciences we'll get to in a moment, have surpassed our social evolution and spiritual evolution. And that's when a civilization becomes very unstable and dangerous, because we must be able to be ahead of our technology in terms of our consciousness and in terms of our level of social development, so that these scientific breakthroughs are used for life-supporting, healing, beneficial, and the advancement of civilization rather than the destruction of civilization. And at this point, these big scientific breakthroughs, and most of the really important ones since the 40s have all been classified, have only been retained and clawed back by the military-industrial complex and have been used for weapon systems and military purposes, which is why we're still burning oil and gas and coal instead of having free energy, zero-point type devices and anti-gravity transportation and other types of devices. And that that imbalance is causing society to get more and more off a path of evolution that is advancing and positive. And this is one of the big challenges, if not the big challenge of our time, is for the people to understand this and to organize, the good folks who understand the needs of this in the future, and say, well, look, we need to make a course correction, and here's what it should look like. That these technologies are used only for peaceful purposes, that we collectively will ensure that we will heal the earth and provide for her children and not weaponize these wondrous new sciences and technologies. And this is something we have to collectively come together and decide. It isn't going to happen through a Ouija board or ETs landing on the White House lawn making it so. Not that the White House would have any say in this anyway, but frankly, because these are classified projects that are beyond the reach of the president. And I think that we as a people have to understand these issues and organize to make this a reality. It is, in a sense, a true evolution revolution without, not a bloodless one, I should say, but in thought and in consciousness and ideas, in order for us to go from the current state of the world to a state that is advancing, peaceful, and where we're living in harmony with nature, but still in a very high-tech way. But to do that, these sciences and technologies have to be unveiled, but unveiled in a way that we assure that they're used for peaceful purposes. Now, some people have said, well, doesn't that mean they should be kept secret? To which I say absolutely not, because right now you have the worst of both worlds. On the one hand, you have enormously powerful technologies that have been developed over the last 50 years that would liberate us from the death-defying, horrific damage we're doing to the environment due to oil and gas and coal and nuclear power, and poisoning the world that we live in that fashion. But it would also liberate the people of the world from the yoke of mind-numbing poverty, where almost half the population of the planet of 7 billion people live in terrible poverty, which is a completely artificial reality that is the direct result of the macroeconomic energy-based system we have that requires there to be the burning of expensive oil and gas and coal or nuclear power in order for people to have basic electrification and refrigeration and transportation. This is something that simply cannot continue. And so the benefit of these sciences and technologies we have not seen yet, and yet the weaponization of them have been going apace for now 60 years with no checks and balances in place. And that means that these sort of breakthroughs in trans-dimensional sciences have been clawed back by this beast, this military-industrial complex, have been weaponized, have been trained on extraterrestrial vehicles. We have numerous witnesses that I've interviewed personally who have been part of those sort of operations. And unfortunately, this means that we have an aspect of our own species, humans, who have organized these technologies and applied them into weapon systems when they should never have been applied as weapon systems and should be truly, those swords need to be made into plowshares, where we would then benefit the earth and humanity. And this is an enormously pressing issue that you do not see people on Capitol Hill or in the White House or at the UN discussing. But I think people who understand that we're being visited by these civilizations and that that we have been doing classified programs studying it, and that we do have these scientific breakthroughs and technologies, many of which are outlined at the OrionProject.org. You can see many hundreds of pages of research papers there. That these sciences and technologies need to come out to benefit humanity, but that also we would have to vow as a people to de-weaponize them and to see that space is not weaponized any further than it is now, and that these technologies are used only for life-supporting peaceful means. We can do that if we come together as a people and vow to. Unfortunately, we live in a situation now where a very small percentage of the population has dominion over this subject in such a way that there are no checks and balances from traditional government, and the people have been completely misled on the issue. And so I think this is something that speaks to why disclosure is so important, and people can see what we're doing at disclosureproject.org for that, but also why we as a people need to come together and make contact with these civilizations around the Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind initiative, the CE5 initiative, which is described at CSETI.org. The reason for that is because these civilizations are really waiting for humans to answer a call, and it's a cosmic call that's gone out. And they're calling for humans to understand mind, transdimensional sciences, and how thought and consciousness can interface with space and time and electronics, which is exactly how they communicate through vastness of space, the great distances of interstellar space. And that's what we're trying to share with people through the training programs that we have, so that more and more people, thousands of people, begin to do this, and that creates a morphogenic field, as Rupert Sheldrake speaks of, that shifts the direction of this whole narrative away from conflict and alien invasion, in 18 movies that portray that, to universal peace and open contact and enlightened contact. And this is really the essence of basically why I left medicine full-time to do this. And I think that it's very important for people to understand that it's going to take that kind of sweat equity by the people, that it isn't going to happen from Booz Allen Hamilton or Lockheed Martin or from the White House or the UN or Hillary Clinton. It's most likely going to come from us. And then as a secondary effect, when more and more open contact begins to happen and it's inevitable, then these sort of traditional leaders will have to get on board. So we have to lead this, and if the people will lead, the leaders will follow.
That's absolutely right, and thank you for addressing that question. I have to say, very often I hear people say, well, these technologies should not be out there, these new technologies to help everyone, because they'll be weaponized. And you've just given a good explanation why people deserve these technologies and how they should be protected.
Yes, and it's an act of great compassion for humanity and for our future and our children's children's children to take this action. And it's also an act of compassion to Gaia, the Earth, who is a conscious living being, who is, by the way, female. I had a very deep experience meeting Gaia once when I had an experience out in space, and she is really suffering under the foolishness of what her children are doing. And we have to have the compassion to lift that burden from her that we have placed upon the Earth. And we can do it. The good news here is that we already have the scientific breakthroughs. We already have the knowledge. How do we bring it out? That's the question. And it's clear that it's going to take leadership from people who are not part of interest groups that want to keep it secret. I mean, it's just kind of, should go without saying. But if you're feeding at the trough of the current macroeconomic energy system, which is also very much embedded into the political system, it's very hard for those people to take a leadership role. The other part of it is that when people do try to step out on these issues, they tend to have murder incorporated show up on their doorstep and threaten them. And this is why there's strength and safety in numbers and in unity. And the reason we've been able to do Disclosure Project and get as far as we have with contact at CSETI.org and also the Orion Project is that we have, many, many thousands of people working to do this and millions of people who follow what we're attempting to do. What we have to do now is have everyone organized around not only their teams, contact teams to make contact, but efforts to work together to bring out and disclose these sciences and technologies in a way that is safe, in a way that benefits the human race, and it also benefits the Earth, and ultimately benefits interplanetary relations. In other words, meaning that they're used for peaceful energy generation and cleaning up the earth and going into space peacefully as a united people. So this is a very big change from how we've been behaving, but it's time for that change. And as we here are on the eve of 2012, the famous 2012 date, we need to look at the big changes that are coming and take the power of that change and direct it and nurture it in this direction of universal peace, and not slide into the old ways of an us versus them mentality. And one of the problems is that there is this tendency for humans, if someone is different from a different tribe or ethnicity or what have you, race, religion, is to view it as otherness, and therefore we should kill them or we should fight with them. And this sort of instinct, tribal instinct of division, is something we have to transcend, but ultimately it won't be transcended as much on the level of the intellect as it will on the level of the heart and of the mind and the spirit, which is why the experience of the universality of mind is so important. It doesn't mean that there won't be differences and there won't be conflicts and disagreements, but it means that we would be able to find ways of moving past them so that we don't go to the point of overt warfare and mass organized murder, which is what warfare is. I mean, once a person asked me about, why don't the ETs just come in here and clean up the mess and, land on the White House lawn? I go, look, certainly they understand that civilizations such as ours have to learn these lessons, and that if we don't learn them through our own conscious evolution, it's not learned. It's imposed from outside and it's artificial. And so it's very important that the children of Earth take control of our destiny. There are civilizations out there ready to welcome us and to help us, but it isn't something that we're the primary movers, because we're the children of Earth. And I think this is something most people don't look at. They get into sort of a cosmic codependency where these ET civilizations are either our enemies or our saviors. And in reality, we have to empower ourselves spiritually and culturally and socially and organizationally to make this transformation happen in conjunction with these civilizations, but not in a codependent way where we sort of think we're going to sit back and these civilizations are going to swoop in and fix all these problems for us. I seriously doubt that's how this is going to play out. So I think that, that they're very patient, obviously. I think the extraterrestrial civilizations, the contact we've had, the meetings we've had, the remote view experiences we've had with specific species from various planets, there's a consistency in the message from them, and that is they're very much wanting to have this contact, but they very much want to see humans correct these fundamental problems that have evolved over the last 100 years on Earth, which have moved us off our optimal evolutionary path. The optimal evolutionary path would have been a few decades of fossil fuels and about 100 years ago, the release of these advances in transdimensional electronics and some of the work that Tesla began to discover, as well as Faraday and Maxwell, that got swept away. And we would have created a civilization that would have been peaceful and would have been abundant and provided for all the children of the earth, so that we weren't in this zero-sum game of fighting over resources and fighting over land and territory. This is something that we have to do. And it's really very empowering to realize, however, that the sciences and knowledge are there, and also the science of consciousness has developed enough that we understand how people working together from a deep level of awareness can make what seem like miraculous things take place, and that the conscious mind is omnipresent, and that as you experience that omnipresence and universality of mind, if particularly with a group of people, there's a multiplier effect that's exponential, not just arithmetic, that empowers that direction of change. And this is what's so exciting about going out into the stars with a group of 20 or 25 people in this state of cosmic awareness, making contact and working on these issues together, is that it does have that empowering effect.
It it's prescient timing for this conversation because as we come on into 2012 and getting close to December 2012, it reminds me of Y2K in the year 2000, and people got so caught up in the fear, and they bought into the fear of what would happen, and we're still here, moving along, 11 years later, almost 12. Now, thinking about coming up to 2012, I know there are a lot of documentaries about the fear, and there's so much time spent on that you have just said, you have just mentioned what we can actively do, applying ourselves. What is our choice to do? Stay in fear or move forward? We have some great trainings coming up this year, which I'm very excited about, and I think the contact's going to be amazing. And we're not going out there in fear. And I think that the more people who realize that there's choice in a lot of things that we do can really help put us over, build up that morphogenic field and get humanity where we want to go.
Yes, and the attitude of the people who wish to make contact informs whether it occurs or not. It's interesting. Some years ago, we had a person who had tried to come to some of these events that we found later was really involved for ulterior purposes and was filled with all kinds of fear and other issues. And every time that person was around, the ET craft and beings would not be there. But if the person couldn't make it out that night or had gone into a building or what have you, they would come in. And it was almost like clockwork. And this sounds almost unbelievable, but that they absolutely know what the intention is, because transdimensional sciences and technologies, I hate to say that they're reading everyone's mind, but they certainly know the intent of why someone would want to go out there. And if they have in their mind an operating paradigm of, I'd like to get to know about this subject so I can become, I later found out this person wanted to become the next Rockefeller of energy and learn what the sciences and technologies were so he could become a trillionaire. And this came out after the fact, but the point I'm making is that these extraterrestrial spacecraft and people would not appear when this person was around, which was really kind of bizarre until later we learned what the real agenda was that was operating in this man's heart and mind. And this sounds really magical to folks, but it isn't if you understand transdimensional technologies and sciences, and that these civilizations really are not wanting to interact with people for that purpose. They're really wanting to interact with humans for the purpose of developing a relationship and peaceful communication and contact. They know that we already have many scientists who understand these sort of energy systems, but we, the people, haven't organized a means to bring them out yet. And so it's not like the ETs are going to land and hand us a device and say, here, let's manufacture this through General Electric. Well, General Electric actually has these sort of technologies that they put on a black shelf, as have many other corporations such as Lockheed Martin and other big industrial behemoths. So the question is, we as humans have access within our minds all the levels of science and technology that any other civilization would have. They have to be developed in a sequential way so that we can apply them. But the big leap forward hasn't happened yet in terms of applying these non-local sciences and technologies that pull energy out of the fabric of space-time and that are transdimensional sciences and technologies, because there are so many vested interests that have squashed it over the years. And the squashing of it is something that has been very well thought through and is ongoing, as certainly Dr. Bravo, you and I have experienced with the Orion Project. But it doesn't mean that it can't happen. It just means that we have to do more as a people to organize around that. We have to do more to make open contact. And one of the things that we have now, those of you with iPhones and iPads, we have a CSETI contact app that you can download, and it has all the meditation techniques on it, the tones that we project out into space for contact. It actually enables the iPhone to become a magnetometer that picks up when trans-dimensional craft are around that may not be visible with the naked eye, but will begin to shift the magnetic field around you. All these sort of things are in this app. It's an amazing app within it. Todd Goldenbaum developed it for us, and that's available to people, and the whole training program is available at disclosureproject.org, and that is in addition, of course, to people who, if they have the time, can come out with us for a week out under the stars. We're going to be going for a week on the Gulf of Mexico in Florida in April, and so people who have the time and can come with us for a whole week are invited to join us. Last year when we were there, we had the most extraordinary contact that took place right on this beautiful state beach that we had exclusive use of for the week. And there was literally 3.5 hours of trans-dimensional energy fields and craft appearing and disappearing right on the beach and over the mangroves by the beach, and was filmed and witnessed by people for 3.5 hours. So we're very excited to go back there in April, and I'm hoping that we'll have sort of an acceleration of what happened this past year, and I think we will.
Yes, that was an excellent time. A lot of the footage, because there's so much, and the person who processes it has to go frame by frame. But we do have. I just found out actually yesterday that he's found more. So when we can put this up, we will. But we do have it. We need to process it. But it's very exciting, and as soon as we can put it on the CSETI website, we will.
So yes, and we have volunteers come forward to help us do some of this on YouTube. Unfortunately, I'm not the person to do all that internet and tech stuff, and everyone we're dealing with are volunteers and have their day jobs and lives. So, but at any rate, we're going to try to get these things out as soon as we can. And one of the things that people can also do is that they can form their own local contact team and then be part of a global contact initiative that Costa, who's been on the show with me a couple of times, is helping coordinate. Where on a given night, in say a certain weekend night in a given month, teams from all over the world, hundreds of people, will go out at the same evening, and that creates this shift in consciousness that potentiates contact. And people have been having extraordinary contact experiences, not only with materialized craft and beings, but also transdimensional electronic tones, telepathic contact, amazing experiences. And so that's something that people can also be part of, and information on that is at CSETI.org as well. So
yes, I will say that many of these people, and especially a lot of people, even though people come from all over the world to the trainings, so many of these people, I just want to emphasize, have never been to a training. They've just gotten the information from the website. It is there.
And many people, of course, if anyone who looks into this subject, is sort of turned off immediately by all the negativity on it, everything from abductions to cattle mutilations to this thing to alien invasion and blah, blah. And, basically, many times that, of course, I've been challenged more than once with people saying, well, what if there are one or two of these civilizations out of hundreds that are out there that are hostile? And I point out, first of all, there's not a scintilla of evidence that that's the case. But let's play devil's advocate and say there is. What would be the response? Nuclear weapons? Putting weapons in space? Taking these advanced transdimensional electronic weapons and going to interplanetary war? This would be worse than mutual assured destruction. So the path of safety and wisdom is still to do what we're doing with the CE5 initiative, the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, which is when humans initiate the contact from a higher level of consciousness to make peaceful contact. So we call this whole training program ambassadors to the universe, not ambassadors to the ETs that look like they came from Norway. So I think that it's really important to understand that we have to transcend the sort of latent racism and xenophobia that permeates the UFO subculture, and understand that even if it were it is. But even if it were true that there is a civilization out there, wouldn't be the wise path be exactly what we're doing? It wouldn't be going out there in armed conflict, because if we couldn't survive mutual assured destruction with the Soviet Union, we certainly couldn't survive an exchange between one planet and another using weapons that are 100 or 1,000 times more destructive than a thermonuclear weapon. This is ridiculous. So no matter what your view on that would be, the path of wisdom and of safety and of the future is peace. The only possible future for the human race here on this planet, given the technologies we have today, and out in space, is peace. And we have to find a way to make that real, because it's no longer adequate to have world peace. We have to have universal peace, interplanetary peace. And that's the big challenge of the next, well, certainly of the rest of our lifetimes, and perhaps for several hundred years. But that is the big challenge that lies ahead of us. And it sounds very futuristic to be thinking and talking about universal and interplanetary peace and relations when we're still fighting and squabbling on this planet. But in reality, it isn't. We have to be able to walk and chew gum. We're going to have to be able to take care of all those issues in a fairly short time frame. And the reason for it is that technologies are going to continue to develop. And we're going to have to, as a people, consciously, socially, spiritually, be up to the task of our level of development scientifically. And that would require an interplanetary peace and interplanetary relations. And this is why the CE5 initiative and the consciousness behind it and the ethic behind it is so key. And this is why when we go out into the stars, we're not there trying to make contact with this ET group but not that one, or this one and then not that one. There's none of that going on, because that is that's exactly the kind of divisive mindset that gets us into these conflicts. And, you look at the last 100 years of the human race. We were dropping atomic bombs on Japan. Now they're some of our closest allies. We went to complete all-out war with Germany. And now they're our closest allies in Europe. So this sort of vacillating and going through these periods of upheavals using war as the solution is simply a paradigm that has to be put permanently to rest and put another foundation in there that creates a permanent, long-lasting, universal peace. That's the future that we must manifest together.
That's a great vision, and it already should have happened. I don't see it as really futuristic at all. It should have been here before, but we can help bring it about.
Yes, and of course I view it as something where many times people say, well, gosh, isn't that very idealistic and futuristic? I said, no, it's very practical, and it's actually we're about 50 to 100 years late. So there's nothing futuristic about it.
Right.
It's only futuristic if you haven't been informed of the facts of the last 100 years. And I often refer to this as the missing century. If I had time, I would write a book called The Missing Century that would talk about the last 100 years of events and technologies and all kinds of information that have just been shoved into a black box and kept secret. And it really does constitute a missing century in human development. I know many people feel very, sort of puffed up that we have cell phones and smartphones and the internet, but those telecommunication systems are still running on a coal-fired power grid, or even in some cases worse. If you look what happened in Japan, a nuclear-powered grid, which is basically getting a steam engine from heat by splitting an atom. That's all a nuclear power plant is. It's basically a fancy steam turbine that we used to have in the 1800s. But you're getting the heat for the steam from splitting the atom instead of burning coal or oil or something, or hydrothermal. So I think that what people have to understand is that these changes are within our ability to make because the sciences and technologies are extant. They may be hidden and they may be suppressed, but they're there. And the knowledge is there. I always say to people, I'm sure at least 99% of the human race are in favor of living together peacefully, working together peacefully, and going into space peacefully. There are very few people who are addicted to this paradigm of endless war, but somehow they have so much money and power and influence that they're this is the other part of the 99%. 99% of that, if you took up 7 billion people, I seriously doubt out of the 7 billion people, the 1% of that would be 70 million. I doubt there are 70 million people really that devoted to global or interplanetary war. And so more than 99% of the human race would embrace this vision. And so we have to articulate it, share it, and organize around it to the best that we can, because that's really the only viable future. We really only have one option. It's either annihilation or peace. And so when we go out under the stars, we are specifically not picking and choosing amongst ET races or species. We're specifically saying we are humans who are in this state of universal mind. We see with the eye of oneness, and that we are all one with these other civilizations at this deep level of transcendent pure consciousness. And we also acknowledge that we have more in common than would be different because of this essential oneness of sentient self-awareness, of being able to be aware of this greater self, of the higher self, of this conscious universal mind. And that is the foundation for making contact, and that is with all of them. And then approaching it that way, it transcends all these mythologies and conflicts and what have you. And if we have to do that with each other as well, whether someone is of another race, or if someone's gay or straight, or if someone is a different gender, or someone's a different ethnicity, or what have you, that basically we need to see the light of awareness and spirit within that person and see, well, we have a lot more common with that than we do whatever cultural differences there would be. This is a true spiritual challenge. And I've always said that the root of our problem on this planet is spiritual, and therefore the solution will be spiritual.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well put. So,
well, I do want people to feel free to join us at this event that we're having in Marco Island, Florida, that will be in April. The information and dates for that are at CSETI, CSETI.org. And we're going to also then this summer be out in the Rockies of Colorado for a week, and then we will be at Mount Shasta, California, in August. And so we have a number of events planned throughout the year. And then we'll be in the desert Southwest later in November of 2012. So we have a number of upcoming events that are posted up on our website. So if you'd like to join us, we'd like to extend a heartfelt invitation to all of you who appreciate the importance of universal mind. And one of the things we do at these, and I've taken to doing this pretty much every night, is I do a puja that brings in the power of universal mind and a remembrance of the teachings of the great masters that are universal in their perspective. And we love doing this in our circle when we can, if it's not windy or bad weather, out under the stars or right at sunset together. And it's just a wonderful way of starting our contact event for the evening, is to do a puja. So those, I normally don't talk that much about that, but it's the World Puja Network. Of course, everyone on the World Puja Network understands the tradition of the puja, and also of universal consciousness and the science of consciousness. So that is the foundation of what we're doing, and we hope that some of you who are listening will join us at these exciting events out under the stars.
Yeah, and again, if you have some wonderful event happen or something you wish to communicate with us, please let us know. We'd love to hear about your experiences as well.
Oh, yes, very much. So recently we had a young man who's in college who learned I don't know if it was from the iPhone app or from the training kit program that we have, but he had not been on one of these trainings. I've never met this gentleman, but he had this experience where he practiced it, and he was going to bed doing the meditation protocols, and suddenly an extraterrestrial face and being appeared in front of him. And then he just fell asleep, and the next day he was driving out to the mountains because And it was in daytime. He was heading up in the mountains, and this beautiful spacecraft completely materialized and went along beside the car for a distance. And he actually sent us drawings, some very good drawings of it. And he couldn't believe, he initially thought all this couldn't be true and that it was just crazy. And he did it, and now he's saying, oh my God, this is actually how contact is made. So, and, you know, I tell people, you know, you don't have to be, you know, Sai Baba or Gurudev or Maharishi or Yogananda to do this. Every human being that's conscious and awake can become aware of that mind, and we give the meditation techniques and teach people to do the contact using thought with these ET civilizations. And if it's done with a pure heart and an open mind, people are astonished, really, at how easy it is, and also that these ET civilizations are eagerly waiting for us to answer the cosmic call that has been put out. They're waiting for humanity to do exactly what we're doing.
Right, right.
So let's answer that call. And when we come together in oneness to do that, that becomes a force for universal peace. So on that note, we will wish all of you happy holidays and a wonderful solstice, and also a great new year. And we hope to see many of you in 2012. So God bless you, and keep looking up.